The most dangerous man in Seoul did not believe in coincidence. He believed in leverage, intelligence, and the cold mathematics of power. 11 years building the Jeon criminal syndicate had made him untouchable, feared across boardrooms and back alleys from Seoul to Singapore. But nothing prepared him for a Lagos alley, a rainstorm, and a woman standing between 3 small children and certain danger with nothing but fury and bare hands. Jeon Siwon saved her because she was in his path. He looked into the stroller because the children were crying. Then he saw their faces. And the most feared man in the Korean underworld felt something crack open inside his chest that no bullet, no rival, and no courtroom had ever managed to touch. 1 woman, 3 children, 3 years of silence between them, a war just beginning. This is their story, and it begins with rain. If love across impossible distance has ever found you, like this, share it, and subscribe. This story will live in your chest long after it ends. The market of Ladipo never truly slept. Even at 9:30 on a Tuesday night, it breathed. Generators coughing diesel smoke, hawkers clearing final carts, Okada riders threading through thinning crowds with the reckless ease of men who had made peace with danger. Amara walked fast. 3 years in Lagos had changed her, turned a soft-spoken researcher into something leaner and more watchful. Her bag crossed her body. Her eyes read the street ahead like a map of possible threats. She was 28 years old and carried herself like someone twice that. Behind her, in an overcrowded second-hand stroller, were her 3 children, Zara, Kofi, and Miso, 2 years and 9 months old, born 11 minutes apart on a thunderstorm night in a Lagos clinic Amara had paid for by selling the last jewelry she owned. Zara slept with her thumb in her mouth. Kofi catalogued the evening market with the focus of a small scientist. Miso watched his mother's back with absolute, uncomplicated trust. That trust kept Amara's legs moving on the nights she wanted to stop. She was nearly at her gate when 3 men stepped from the shadow. Her body knew before her mind did. Cold adrenaline, world-shocking. The lead man had a scar below his left ear and the relaxed posture of someone not worried about outcomes. He claimed her landlady owed his boss 6 months of debt. His eyes moved over the children in a way that turned Amara's stomach to ice. She positioned herself between the men and the stroller. When they moved, she swung her grocery bag, tins of tomatoes, connecting hard, and 1 man went down. But the 3rd caught her from behind, arm around her throat, vision spotting at the edges. Then Zara woke up and screamed. A black car appeared at the alley mouth. 4 men came out moving with coordinated precision. Trained, professional, something entirely different from street violence. The arm around her throat released. Amara grabbed the gatepost, dragged air into her lungs, pulled the stroller to her body. She looked up. A tall Korean man in a rain-soaked charcoal suit walked toward her. His face hit her with a recognition so violent it felt like being struck from the inside. Jeon Siwon stopped 2 meters away. He looked at her. Then his eyes dropped slowly to the stroller, to 3 small faces looking back at him. His gaze moved from Zara to Kofi to Miso, and something in the architecture of his expression cracked completely open, because those children had their mother's rich dark skin and full mouth. But they had his face, all 3 of them. He just saw them for the first time. Drop a fa if you felt that. Share this with someone who needs it today. The silence between them lasted 4 seconds and felt like a lifetime. Jeon Siwon was supposed to be in Seoul. He was supposed to be in his tower running his empire, not standing in a Lagos alley in the rain, staring at 3 children with his bone structure wearing a stranger's dark skin. His eyes moved over the children with a slowness that was almost reverent. Amara watched him look, watched the mathematics complete themselves behind his eyes. The jaw shape, the eye structure, the way Kofi held his chin, the way Miso's long fingers mirrored the hands of the man standing before them. When he said her name, it detonated quietly somewhere behind her sternum. She told him no when he asked her to get in the car, and she walked through the gate with the stroller, and 3 years of determination holding her spine straight. Upstairs, with the children finally sleeping, she gave herself exactly 90 seconds to fall apart, shaking against the children's bed, fist pressed to her mouth. Then she got up, washed her face, and made tea she wouldn't drink. She knew he wasn't gone. Jeon Siwon didn't leave things unfinished. When her phone buzzed with a Seoul number, she picked up. The conversation was short and devastating, each word carrying years of weight. He told her the children had his eyes. She told him they had her love, and that was all they needed. She hung up. 3 floors below, the black car sat in the Lagos rain until morning and did not move. They have my love. That's all they need. Like this if Amara just became your hero. And subscribe. This story will live in your chest long after it ends. Park Ji-hoon had been Siwon's second in command for 9 years. In 18 hours of operating in a city he had never worked before, he had assembled a picture that changed everything. The men from the alley were not random. Their organization traced through shell companies in Macau to a single name, Bak Han-soo, Siwon's oldest rival, a man who lost the Jeon Group succession 9 years ago and had spent every year since building patiently toward retaliation. Bak had been running West African operations for 2 years, and for 3 months, he had maintained a surveillance operation specifically targeting Amara. The bandits were not debt collectors. They were conducting a confirmation exercise to verify what Bak suspected about the children. When Ji-hoon delivered this intelligence, Siwon's stillness acquired a different quality, the way a river looks the same on the surface the moment before it changes direction entirely beneath. Bak had built his strategy around triggering Siwon emotionally, getting him to Lagos, exposed and unpredictable, operating outside his area of maximum control. The children were intended as leverage against the Jeon network's most valuable operating licenses. Siwon issued 3 directives: increase the perimeter around Amara's building, identify Bak's full Lagos infrastructure, and locate his aunt, Yoon-hee. 2 kilometers away, Amara sat across from her best friend Tolu, the only person who knew the complete story, and said simply, "He's here." Tolu received this information with appropriate gravity. Whatever came next, Tolu confirmed, was already starting. Bak has been watching them for 3 months. Comment, danger, and subscribe. Chapter 4 reveals the betrayal that started everything. Jeon Yoon-hee had managed the Jeon family's reputation and secrets for 30 years. She had outlasted rivals, investigations, and hostile takeovers. She was not a woman who panicked. But reading Ji-hoon's message, "Siwon knows he is asking for you," she felt the specific fear that comes from internal reckoning, not from external threat. When Siwon called, he arrived at the truth without preamble. She had gone to Amara 3 years ago. She had told her the relationship was over, which was false. She had used a 25-year-old woman's fear in a foreign country to remove her from Siwon's life, calling it protection for the family. She had not known about the pregnancy, but Siwon made clear this was not a defense. 3 children had been born and grown for nearly 3 years without him knowing they existed. Yoon-hee had set that in motion. She offered no sufficient response. There was none. Siwon told her to sit with what she had cost them. Then he told her to begin to prepare to meet the mother of his children and the 3 grandchildren she had never seen. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon completed his analysis of Bak's strategy and arrived at a chilling conclusion. The operation was not simply opportunistic, it was constructed as a trap. Bak had positioned himself near Amara specifically to force Siwon into emotional exposure. He had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. Siwon's response was quiet and absolute. Bak had made a fundamental miscalculation. He believed love made him vulnerable. He was about to learn it made him ungovernable. His own aunt sent Amara away. Comment, betrayal, and share this. Someone needs to read this chapter today. He arrived at 7:58. Amara, watching from the window, noted this. He had come early and then sat in the car. For Jeon Siwon, the equivalent of pacing. She let him in. The apartment was loud with mourning. Zara negotiated with her porridge. Kofi organized his toy cars with architectural precision. Miso watched his mother's back with absolute, uncomplicated trust. That trust kept Amara's legs moving on the night she wanted to stop. She was nearly at her gate when Siwon stood in the doorway. The controlled architecture of the man Amara had known in Seoul, the composed, unreachable professional surface, dropped piece by piece as he took in the scene. Zara noticed him first and assigned him floor space and porridge with the authority of someone who has been running a household since she could form full sentences. He accepted both without deflection, sitting cross-legged on the carpet and receiving her explanation of what was wrong with the food with complete attention. Kofi watched from across the room, cataloging. Miso stopped with his socks. He looked at the stranger, then at his mother, then back. He stood up, crossed the room on unsteady legs, stopped in front of Siwon and raised both arms. Siwon looked at Amara. She gave the smallest nod. He reached down and lifted his son. Miso settled against his chest with the absolute ease of something finding its place and grabbed a fistful of collar and buried his face in his father's neck. Amara pressed her hand over her mouth and looked at the window for a very long time. Miso raised his arms and everything changed. Like this if you felt it. Share it. Nobody should read this alone. The envelope arrived at Amara's tutoring center on a Thursday morning. No return address. Her name in a precise, unhurried hand. Inside, 3 photographs. The first showed her building, recently enough that the new curtains in the children's room were visible. The second showed the daycare exterior shot from a surveillance position. The third showed her children playing in the daycare courtyard, Zara gesturing, Kofi examining the ground, and Miso looking directly at the camera with his father's unnerving, composed attention. On the back of the third photograph, beautiful children. It would be a shame if their father's enemies became their problem. Amara sat with the photographs for 60 seconds. Then she called Siwon. He arrived in 14 minutes. He came alone, without his security configuration, the version of himself she was beginning to distinguish as different from the chairman. He looked at the photographs, identified Bak Han-soo without pause. He told her the full picture, the rival, the strategy, the children as intended leverage. He told her about the security perimeter he had already quietly placed around her building, which she was legitimately annoyed about. He accepted the annoyance. Then he proposed moving her. Not to Seoul, not on his terms, but to somewhere in Lagos that she would choose and he would secure. No conditions, no obligations, just safety. She told him she needed to think. He told her to take what she needed. When she paused at the door and said the answer was probably yes, he simply said he would be outside. From a building 2 blocks north, Bak's Lagos operator photographed the black car and sent one word to Seoul. Confirmed. Bak is 3 steps ahead. Comment "I see it" and subscribe because Chapter 7 is the conversation that changes everything. Some conversations can only happen in small places. The Buka restaurant on Amara Street was the right size. Plastic chairs, fluorescent lights, pepper soup arriving without being ordered, and a woman who understood when a table needed to be left alone. Amara arrived first. She had prepared for negotiation. What she received instead was honesty delivered with a precision that made defense unnecessary and unhelpful. Siwon told her he had looked for her for 8 months. The trail had been professionally cleaned, his aunt's work. He had accepted her disappearance when he should not have. He told her he never ended things at the gala. Yoonhee's claim to Amara was a lie constructed entirely to remove her. Amara told him the truth in return. She had not run primarily from danger. She had run because staying would have required becoming someone she didn't know how to be. He was the least frightening part of his world, which was its own kind of problem. Leaving was terrifying but navigable. Staying felt impossible. He told her he should have given her the information to choose, rather than protecting her from it. She told him the difference between protection and decision-making on someone's behalf, and he accepted it without qualification. Then she told him about Miso, that their son had been saying his father's name for 6 months without being taught it, the Korean pronunciation, without knowing who it belonged to. Siwon pressed 2 fingers to his mouth, looked at the table, breathed. When he looked up, something in him had settled at a depth below strategy, simple, decided, and permanent. Miso said his father's name for 6 months without knowing why. Like this and share with everyone. This story is too important to keep to yourself. Amara said yes on a Saturday morning with her tea going cold in her hand. She delivered her terms clearly: the house in her name, utilities from her own income, his presence by invitation not assumption, her autonomy non-negotiable. He agreed to all of it without negotiation, which was its own kind of disorienting. Jihoon found the Ikoyi property by afternoon. The title deed was in Amara's name within 48 hours. The house secured through quiet professional means in a neighborhood whose surroundings Jihoon had already assessed. Amara walked through it with Tolu, who declared the garden a sign from God and observed that a man who puts the house in your name without being asked is serious in a way that transcends categories. Moving day came with an efficient team, a van, and Mama Kike, who cried, hugged Amara at length, and examined Siwon with a comprehensive assessment of a woman who had seen everything. Her verdict, delivered directly: "You better be worth the trouble." His response: "I intend to be." She found this adequate. The children arrived at the new house and immediately ran into the garden, which Kofi assessed scientifically and Zara claimed as sovereign territory. What no one in the warmth of that moving day knew was that Daniel Eze, Backhand Sue's Lagos operations manager, had followed the moving van. He filed the new address that afternoon with one word: confirmed. Back received the address, studied it, and changed his plan. He could find nothing compromising about Amara, so he stopped looking for leverage and decided instead to move directly. Back just changed his plan. Subscribe with notifications on. Chapter 9 is where the war begins. The attack came at 2:15 in the morning, coordinated across 3 locations simultaneously. A car fire 3 streets away pulled emergency response. A reported break-in at Amara's old address redirected part of Siwon's security. And 8 professional men, not Lagos street operators but imported, trained, flown in from 3 countries, moved on the Ikwe house perimeter. Jihoon identified the pattern as coordinated diversion within 90 seconds. He had Siwon on the phone before the perimeter was breached. Siwon crossed the landing to Amara's door, 2 knocks. She was awake in seconds. She had not been deeply asleep. He told her to get dressed, get the children warm. 3 minutes. She said 3.5. She made it in 3. They moved through Lagos back streets at 2:30 in the morning in a vehicle with no connection to the Jeon network, Jihoon's careful prior preparation. Siwon drove. Amara sat in the back between her children, one hand on each, her face forward and her fear converted entirely to function. In the safe house above a medical supply business in Surulere, with the children back asleep, the operational picture assembled. 8 imported professionals. Back had escalated because he had run out of leverage and decided to take the children directly, holding them in exchange for the Jeon Group's 6 most valuable East Asian operating licenses. Siwon gave Jihoon 20 days to dismantle Bak's network and deliver the evidence to a sole prosecutor before Bak understood what was happening. At 4 a.m., Amara came out of the bedroom and asked how long. 20 days. She said she believed him. He understood what it cost her to say that. She said, "I believe you," at 4 a.m. and meant every word. Like and subscribe. We're heading into the final chapters. The 20 days passed with a density that left marks. The children settled into this Surulere flat with a resilience that made Amara proud and heartbroken simultaneously. Proud because they had roots deep enough to hold in any soil. Heartbroken because no child should need that at 3 years old. They were, in each of their distinct ways, fine. Zara assigned Siwon household tasks and assessed his execution critically. He met her standards. Kofi placed a single toy car beside Siwon's coffee cup on day 4 without looking at him and returned to his play. Siwon maintained the exact sizing order of the arrangement. The following morning, there were 2 cars. Miso treated Siwon's physical presence as a fixed coordinate, simply true, like breakfast and his mother's voice. Siwon and Amara developed a domestic rhythm across the 20 days that neither named. He learned breakfast requirements for all 3 children: Zara's 7 minutes of independence, Kofi's unmixed porridge, Miso's comprehensive enthusiasm for all food except mango. He drove the school run. He sat at the kitchen table in the evenings working while she cooked, and they talked, finding again the ease that had existed in Seoul before everything broke. One night, Amara found him in the children's room at 10 o'clock, sitting between the beds reading a Korean children's book and translating quietly into English, Miso's hand wrapped around his thumb in sleep. In parallel and invisible, Jihoon dismantled Bak Han-soo's network with methodical thoroughness. On day 20, Bak was arrested in his Abuja hotel suite. Jihoon called Siwon at 6:15. It was done. Siwon sat in the kitchen with bad coffee, listening to the house breathe, and sat with the word that had taken up permanent residence: family. 20 days, a family became real. Comment 20 days, then like and share. The final chapters are everything. Of the three children, Kofi spoke least and understood most. On the morning of day 21, he climbed onto the chair beside Siwon at the breakfast table, arranged himself quietly, deliberately, and asked without preamble whether Siwon was their father.
The table went silent. Amara at the counter stopped moving. Zara's spoon froze. Even Miso stilled his tower building. Siwon asked where Kofi had learned the word. Kofi told him Miso said it at night in his sleep. Siwon looked at Amara's back. Then he looked at Kofi, directly, with complete honesty, and said yes. Kofi nodded once, filed it correctly, and returned to his cars. Zara informed Miso she had told him so. Miso resumed his tower with the expression of someone whose patience has been vindicated. Amara turned around and told Siwon they needed to talk. That evening on the back porch, with the rainy season garden dark and lush around them, they established the terms of telling the children properly. Together, both parents present, age appropriately, soon. She acknowledged he had answered Kofi without consulting her first. He acknowledged this was wrong. She acknowledged that the only answer in that moment had been yes. Then she told him she had been looking every day for the thing that would confirm he was strategy rather than genuine. She had not found it. She had been closer than she admitted, she said, for longer than she had intended to be. He told her he would wait for closer. The rainy season rain arrived softly on the garden around them, and neither of them moved to go inside. He said, "I'll wait for closer." Comment closer if your heart grew. Subscribe. 2 chapters left and they will finish you. Jeon arrived in Lagos on Wednesday without announcing herself, which was, Amara thought, when Siwon called, entirely consistent with how this woman moved through the world. Amara sat with the question of whether to meet her for a long time. She sat in the garden and thought about the Jeon of 3 years ago, the immaculate suit, the careful delivery, the kindness of the warning that had sent her across an ocean. Then she thought about what she had built in the years that warning produced, and she said yes. Jeon came to the Ikoyi house at 4 o'clock. She sat across from Amara at the kitchen table and did not waste the meeting on insufficient gestures. She stated what she had done, clearly with the specificity of someone who had spent the journey deciding not to soften it. She had identified Amara as wrong for the family and removed her. She had used a young woman's fear as an instrument. She had called it protection. She was not asking for forgiveness because she had not earned the right to ask for it. Amara listened without collapsing or hardening. She acknowledged the gravity it deserved and set her terms for what came next. Jeon would come as a great aunt, not as a family manager, and the timeline would be Amara's. Jeon accepted every condition. Amara opened the back door. Zara assessed the newcomer, received her introduction, and led her into the garden to be shown its important features. Jeon, the composed, strategic architect of 30 years of Jeon family management, walked into a Lagos garden led by a toddler and dissolved completely. Zara just healed everyone. Share this chapter. Somebody needs Amara's grace today. And subscribe. From his detention in Abuja, Bak Han-soo requested a meeting with Siwon. He implied he had something, leverage, material, something involving Amara. Siwon identified the move immediately. Beck had nothing. His organization dismantled, his accounts frozen, his operators detained. The meeting request was a performance of power by a man who had lost it all. He declined. He declined not because he feared the bluff, but because meeting Beck would alarm Amara, require explanation, and bring his world further into her space than necessity required. He had committed to not doing that. Beck's representative confirmed within the hour what Siwon already knew. There was nothing. The bluff was the last card. He told Amara, not the full operational detail, but the fact. Beck had attempted a meeting and he declined because she deserved to know anything that peripherally involved her. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded and thanked him. 2 days later, his Seoul office sent a document requiring his immediate presence for an emergency board meeting. Pre-Lagos Siwon would have been on a plane within hours. He looked at the document, called the office, pushed the meeting 48 hours. His COO in 7 years had never had the phrase prior commitments. The commitment was Zara's daycare performance. She had assigned him the front row with the certainty of someone who considers attendance a fixed expectation. He sat in the front row in a suit that cost more than the building's rent, in a plastic chair not designed for his frame, phone put away, full attention on a small girl on a milk crate stage who found his eyes and registered with small proprietorial satisfaction that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He postponed a board meeting for the front row. Front row, like if Siwon is everything right now. He placed it on the table on a Sunday evening. Not with ceremony, not with occasion. He had decided that Amara's relationship with grand gestures was one of alert suspicion, so he placed a key on the kitchen table beside an untouched cup of tea and let it be what it was. Beneath the key, a deed. Her name on every line. His name nowhere. No conditions, no mortgage, no Jeon Group holding. The Ikoyi house, entirely, unconditionally hers. She asked why. He told her that since she left home for Seoul on a scholarship, every place she had lived had been borrowed. University housing, rented rooms, a flat secured for crisis. She had never had a door that opened and closed solely on her own terms. He wanted her to have that before anything else between them was decided, irrespective of anything else. She held the key for a long time. She told him she had been waiting every day for 3 weeks for the thing that would confirm he was strategy, that the children were heirs to be claimed, and that she was an asset to be secured. She had not found it. She had been closer than she admitted, she said, for longer than she had intended to be. He told her he would wait for closer. The rainy season rain arrived softly on the garden around them, and neither of them moved to go inside. She put her hand over his, and he held on. Like, share, and subscribe. 1 chapter left, and it is worth everything. 6 months later, the Ikoyi house in the morning smelled like coffee, an argument, and something frying, the particular warm density of a house where children live fully. Zara had opinions about everything and expressed them at volume. Coffee had begun building architectural structures from household items and presenting them to Siwon for technical assessment, which Siwon provided with the seriousness the work deserved. Miso had found full sentences and used them with precision, observing everything and commenting selectively. 3 years old and already the most accurate person in the room. One Tuesday morning, he looked at Siwon across the breakfast table and stated without inflection that Siwon loved her mother. Siwon confirmed this. Miso asked if she knew. Amara, not looking up from her toast, said she did now. Miso returned to his porridge satisfied. The actual conversation happened that evening on the back porch. Siwon told her clearly, not the composed professional version, but the real one, unmanaged, that he had loved her since a charity gala in Seoul when she stood in front of a Basquiat print and he couldn't find a reason to walk away. That he had loved her through 3 years of not knowing where she was, and that he intended to spend what remained of his life making that evident. She told him she had loved him the entire time and had been furious about it. He laughed. She leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. 3 months later, the ring appeared on the breakfast table. No speech, no ceremony, just the question. She said yes. Miso agreed from behind his porridge. Kofi placed a new car beside the coffee cup and said nothing further. The rain came down on Lagos as it had always had, warm and theatrical and alive, on 2 people and 3 children who had found each other across every possible distance. Still standing, still holding, only just beginning. Still standing, still holding, only just beginning. If this story lived in your chest, like it, share it with everyone, and subscribe. More stories are coming. I'll see you in the next chapter. Don't go too far.